First of all, there's been some people creating a bit of mischief, spreading misinformation about this. But firstly, let's just understand the concept of preferences. Now, in a federal election, you must number every square in the lower house, House of Representatives. You must number every square on the ballot paper. If you don't, your vote is informal and doesn't count. Right? So if there's 5 boxes on the ballot paper, you've got to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, with 1 being your first preference, 2 being your second, third, and fourth. Okay. If there's 12 candidates on the ballot paper, you've got to number all 12 squares. So this is different to a state election. A state election, you can just put 1 and your vote's valid. A federal election, you must number every square. So that's very important for everyone that wants to vote for the United Australia Party. You've got to number every square. Otherwise, you've lost your vote. Your vote doesn't count. It's deemed as informal. And effectively, if you don't number every square, say if this is my ballot paper, and if it's got like 5 squares on, and I just tick or put number 1 next to the United Australia Party, when they go around and count it, they go, not every square's numbered, this ballot's informal, and they effectively get it and screw it up and throw it in the bin. So everyone that wants your vote to count, you have to number every square. That's the first thing. And that means you, as the person with the pen or pencil in your hand at the ballot box, allocates those preferences, no one else. Right? And secondly, let's just go through the concept of why you have preferences. Let's just say there's an election in your area. Okay, what's the seat of Reed? Okay, and say there's 3 of us on the ballot paper. What's the Constable Plod that has are we allowed to talk about him? What's the?
Oh well, there's a few of them. We got Senior Constable Kingston. We've got Jackson.
Right, okay,
we've got Collins.
So it's okay. Let's just say. So there's 3 people on the ballot paper.
Right.
There's Kingston. There's Kelly. That's me. And there's the Aussie Cossack. Right. 3 of us on the ballot paper. Now, say there's 100 votes. Let's just say 39 people vote for Kingston. Right. But everyone else, you've got another 61 votes. So of that 61 votes, right, 30 of them voted for Kelly, right, and 31 of them voted for the Aussie Cossack, right? So we've got Kingston on 39, the Aussie Cossack on 31.
That's too much for Kingston.
Let's say, okay. Okay, so let's just say I'm doing it through 39. Okay, now the people, so we've got 61 people that don't want Kingston. They want either the Kelly or the Cossack, right? So if it was just first past the post, they'd say, oh, Kingston's got 39 votes. He's the winner, right? But if you had a preference system, what happens? They say, well, Kelly, so we've got, let's do it. Kingston's 39, the Cossack's 31, and Kelly's on 30. So I come last. And that's it. Okay. So what happens? They then get those 30 ballot papers that voted for me and put 1 on me. I said, who do they put second up? Who do they put 2 up to? And they get those ballot papers, and all of those 30 people that voted for me, 1, put the Cossack number 2. So those votes then go to the Cossack. So the Cossack is 61, Kingston is 39, the Cossack wins in a landslide.
There we go.
Right? Now, because the reason is, if your candidate gets knocked out, but the candidate that you support, so the 30 people that voted for me, I came last, they get knocked out, but they then should have a say, well, who would you prefer? If Kelly's come last, would you prefer the Cossack? Would you prefer Kingston? So that's the concept. When your candidate comes last, your preferences get to get allocated as who would you prefer. And that's exactly what happens in a federal election, right? The parties don't, this is very important, the parties don't give the preferences. The only person that gives the preference is the person with the pen in their hand that goes into the ballot box and marks they might go, okay, if they went 1 Kelly, 2 Cossack, 3 Kingston. Right? So they put Kingston last. Kelly was knocked out in the first round, so therefore his preference goes to the Cossack. And so it's a very, so the party, so what also the party does, the party can make a recommendation.
So can I just translate this for the common folk out there? who are listening and have asked this question. In other words, it's not up to the party. It's not up to the United Australia Party. It's not up to you. It's not up to Clive Palmer. It's up to the person at the ballot box in how they preference the votes.
Correct. Now, what the parties will do, they will hand out a how to vote card, right? So, because you've got to encourage people, remember, fill the ballot paper out, vote in every square, right? Now, in the example that I gave you, right, where the Cossack came second, you came second, right? It doesn't matter where your preferences go. It's only, your preferences only count if you come lower, if you come last or second last or third last. The first two candidates, which in this case are Kingston and yourself, your preferences don't get allocated. It's only when your candidate comes last. Now, I tell you, we are expecting every seat that we are running in, we don't expect our preferences to be allocated. We expect it to come first or second at the first round of counts. So who we preference, so if your candidate is first or second, it doesn't matter. Your preferences don't get allocated. Right? So, but you still have to number every square, and it's the person with the pen. Now, what the parties and people get, what the parties can do, we'll print out a how to vote card, right? And it will have, vote United Australia Party. This is the way to fill in the Senate ticket. This is the way to fill in the House of Representative tickets, and that will have a recommendation on it, right? Now remember, that is a recommendation only, right? It is the person that fills out the ballot paper. So at the last election, the preferences of the United Australia Party were, I think it was about 60% for the Liberals, 40% for Labor. Now that was probably the people that normally voted for the Liberal Party or normally they voted for the Labor Party, voted for the United Australia and put their preferences that they decided.
Okay, so what you're saying is even in the last election, where the United Australia Party spent $83 million on the campaign, the preferences that were given were not given from the top down. It wasn't your decision. It wasn't Clive Palmer's decision. It was the people at the ballot box who preferenced those votes. Now,
what we will do on that, the recommendation, right? Which remember, no one has to follow. Right? My suggestion is to put the sitting member last. Vote them all out, right? So whoever is the sitting member, whether they're Liberal or Labor, we put them last. And that way you could turn the whole parliament over. They've all done such an appalling job, as far as I'm concerned. They all deserve to be voted out.
Absolutely.
And if we put the sitting member last, you'll basically turn over the member. Firstly, I don't think our preferences are going to matter because we're going to do so well. We'll come first or second, our preferences won't be allocated. Secondly, if there's a seat that happens, our preferences will get rid of the sitting member, irrespective of what seat he's in. But look, there's a long way to go before we print that how to vote card. It obviously depend on, it will vary from seat to seat. It will depend on, there's the odd good candidate in the Labor Party, there's the odd good candidate in the Liberal Party. There's some terrible people we know that shouldn't be in politics at all on both parties. So which way we do, which is our recommendation only, is still a long way away. But the bottom line is we don't give the preferences. It's the person at the ballot box that gives the preferences. So don't let anyone be fooled when someone comes up to you, the United Australia Party are going to give their preferences to such and such. No, we don't. The only person that gives the preferences is the person that marks the ballot paper.
So we can mark that as a false allegation. That we've fact-checked that. We're from the horse's mouth. From Parliament House, Craig Kelly has announced that United Australia Party will not be preferencing and has never preferenced Liberal or Labor. It's the person at the ballot box who makes the decision.
To make 100% clear, we'll be handing out a how to vote card, right? And we'll put both the Liberal and Labor as far down the bottom as we possibly can.
Fantastic.
Right? As far down the bottom as we can, right? So we'll make a recommendation of how the preferences, how people would allocate them, which will vary in each seat. But ultimately, the only person that allocates the preferences is the person that marks the ballot paper, not the party.
Fantastic. I think what the concern is from the good people of Australia, they just don't want their vote, their good vote, to be somehow preferenced. Really, there's a lot of people out there. I think there are millions of people out there who are willing to cast a protest vote. They can't protest on the street. They can't protest through social media. They're censored. They can't say what they want to say. They can't, ring up 2GB, ring up 2UE. They won't get through. And they want to go to the ballot box and they want to protest. They want to drain the swamp, as the United
Yeah.
States say, but in Australia they say drain the dunny. They want to get rid of all these people. Every
Well, that's what I said.
single
That's
sitting member
best
needs to go.
strategy. The best strategy, Seco, to drain the swamp, to vote them all out, to clean them all out, is to put the sitting member last on the ballot paper. So United Australia Party 1, number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, however you like, but the last person you vote for is the sitting member.
Well, certainly for the seat of Reed, where I reside, and we will be, definitely having a big campaign for the United Australia Party here in this electorate. And the seat of Reed, ladies and gentlemen, that encompasses parts of Lidcombe, Auburn, Burwood, Strathfield, Homebush, Five Dock, Breakfast Point, Mortlake. Now, this seat of Reed currently is held by a lady called Fiona Martin, a Liberal Member of Parliament. Now, Liberal Member of Parliament Fiona